is a little swirly thing, and I think we're
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Yes, we are live. Well, hello, and welcome to everybody who is joining us today. This is Tuesday. Now, I know last week I said we were going to do a recorded session today, but I was having a conversation with my friend here, and I said, "Hey, since we're going to be chatting, would you be willing to do the live tomorrow with me?" And she said, "Sure, no problem." Now, for those of you who are in SEA, the Peacefield approach, you would know this lady by name. Probably not by seeing her, but this is your opportunity to see her and see what she looks like, as well as to get to learn about her and why she is so passionate about education. And when I tell you she's passionate about education, think about this. She is a primary school teacher. That's her full-time gig. But then she also has a bookstore catering for the age group that she works with and everybody in between.
Yes.
And after that, she felt like, that's not enough. I am going to start an academy so that I could really reach the kids in a way that I want to reach them, doing the activities. And she's into multisensory learning. So anybody who knows me, know that I am into multisensory
Yes.
learning. And just in case you're not sure who I am, this is your first time you are looking into the lives. I am Shelley-Ann Edwards Barron. I am a creative writing specialist, and my main focus of attention is multisensory learning and how that incorporates into teaching writing. So I am like totally excited, aside from the fact that this is my friend. We're
Yes.
also colleagues, and we'll talk to you a little bit more about that later. But I am so absolutely excited to introduce Candace Desha Francis. And sometimes I call her Candace, sometimes I call her
Desha.
Desha. I don't think I ever called you Miss Francis. So, yes, Miss
No.
Francis. I just did.
Right?
Oh my goodness. Welcome so much to the live, to the live. My first question, I'm going to just give you the first question so you could roll with it as you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more. But my number one question is, what makes you so passionate about education and serving the nation's youth that you are extending yourself and making all these amazingly wonderful services available as a teacher in different arenas as well as the bookstore?
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Shellyan, for having me. To answer your question, I grew up in a household. My mother was a teacher, and my dad, he worked at Petrotrin, but my mom was the person behind ensuring that all of us are educated, right? And we always had books around. We were always reading. She always pushed that. So one of the things, if nothing else, that she would buy for us, it would have been books, and not necessarily books for textbooks, but books just for reading. So sometimes we just sat there and just read for you would read for reading's sake, not that you
Mhm.
had an exam, not that you had, and you just read the newspaper. We read street signs. We read, So everywhere we go, we always reading something, and she's always pointing out things for us. So I think that passion started there. No, I'm the only one in the family. Well, actually, my brother and I are both teachers. Everybody else went into other fields, right? But I think that was where that fire started, from home. And we were always exposed to different activities as well, right? So it wasn't just strictly the academics. My dad, too, besides working at Petrotrin, he was a coach. So it was track and field. So we were exposed to that as well. And I would have seen him as a child growing up, giving himself to other children in terms of coaching other children. And so I think that passion to be of service was always there. So he would, for instance, he would see the potential in a child in terms of the track and field, and would ensure that the child gets the spikes, gets the track shoes, gets that, to ensure that the child could perform. And then similarly, on the education aspect of things, academics, you saw that mommy would also do things like that. So I guess that is where the passion would have started. And I remember also too, while going to school, probably more so secondary school, when my mother had to do her charts and stuff, I would have been doing that for her because I did art form 1 to form 5 for CXC as well. So I would get my practice to do my lettering, understanding how to space your letters, what to put on the chart to make sure it looks well. So I think I kind of was an intern from since then without even realizing.
Yes.
So when finally I okay, you got your subjects, whatever, and I think it was just automatic that I applied to teaching, and then well, after a year, 2 years, 5 years, and then you end up 21 years in the service, and
Wow.
it just happened. I think it was just something natural. They fell in love with it.
Yeah, so I'm seeing, okay, so I heard about the bookstore in a sense with the reading and so on, and well, the teaching, I guess that would be both sides. So you have the academy as well as your main job as a primary school teacher. Now, for me, that's a lot, but I know that that's not the only reason that you got into education. You're also a mom, so
Yes,
we have like the education on all sides in that
yes.
sense.
Yes. So yes, I have one son. He is well a special needs child. Um, he's not in the system because of the severity of his disability. But nevertheless, well, that is one aspect, one passion again that I have, in that, very often these children tend to be just put aside because people believe that you hear all different things they can't learn, they this, they that, they slow, whatever. And I mean, with him working with him over the years, yes, he may not be the typical child in that you're in the classroom. He's taking up his pencil to actually do work, but learning would have taken place with him over the time. So I guess what I have learned, even though I did not do special ed in the formal sense, but what would have learned from being around him and being around other children with disabilities, you have to just find ways to teach them, right? You have to find ways to teach them. And I think also too, I try to transfer some of that to the typical child in the classroom. So sometimes you may find that children may think differently, and you just have
Yes.
to find ways to get that child to understand. So I think I try to transfer some of what I have learned with him, dealing with him, to the typical classroom. In the earlies, I didn't really understand that. But I guess that is what I would have learned over time with him, that
Hmm.
all children could learn. You just have to
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
ways of,
And you mentioned, typical child, typical classroom. I wonder if we sit to define that, we might spend the rest of the time
yes,
just trying to figure out what is a
what it
typical
is.
child, who is a typical child, what is a typical
Yes,
classroom,
exactly.
because
Yeah.
everybody is so unique and so different. And then when
Yes,
you have the combination of children in a classroom, it makes it so dynamic and different.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think too, as you add that, as a teacher, you have to be so flexible. You have to be flexible and understand that sometimes you may set out to do a particular lesson a particular way. And when you get in front of the students, you realize that, hey, you have to make changes, right? So I think
Hmm.
I keep that in the back of my mind. And sometimes too, you may plan, okay, this particular topic, I may want to do 5 lessons. But then somewhere along the line, you're working with them, you realize, hey, I probably need to do 7. So as a teacher, you have to be willing, at least I try to be flexible and add and take away depending on what I see in front of me. Because the idea is I am not necessarily teaching the curriculum, but you're teaching the children, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
sometimes I try to keep that flexibility to me is of utmost importance. You have to be flexible as a teacher.
And that reminds me of one of my favorite quotes when it comes to creative writing. The quote is teach the writer, not the writing.
Yes.
And that's basically what you just said. That's it, like the foundation of student-centered
Yeah.
education, where you're understanding where the students are and you know what would be most beneficial to them. So you're trying to get them as much of that as possible. So you're
Yes.
not, if it ends up that you surpass the curriculum and they're still going, you going too, because
Yes.
you're adding as long as you have that time with them.
Yes,
So
definitely.
that is completely, I mean, I'm already excited enjoying this conversation, and I know a lot of parents in particular. We've interviewed other people, well, at least I have in the past and during these lives, but I believe you're the first primary school teacher that we
Okay.
have. Yes.
Yes.
So we're going to be asking lots and lots of questions. Now, I
Yeah.
know the level you taught, and I'm saying taught because I know you're changing, and we'll
Yes.
talk about that as well.
Yes.
The level that you taught from me in primary school, I think, is one of the more critical turning points for primary school students and parents as well. So I want us to talk a little bit about that level and why it's such a critical turning point.
Well, in terms of what I would have observed over the years, not and it's not only about the academics alone, but at that age, 9, 10 years, children usually go through the physical, well, at least begin to go through the physical changes. Because now you find that they're heading into what they call now the preteens. You find that some children, you have the biological aspect already changing. So that is one aspect that you have to deal with, right? So you have that, and then you also have, well, the psychological, because they're not sure, they're not finding themselves. So you're not sure, I'm not really a child in the
Hmm.
sense of a
But I'm
five-year-old,
still a child.
6-year-old, but I'm still a child. And then you have those who, as I mentioned, they go begin. You would be surprised because I think when I was probably standard four, standard five back in that in the when I was in primary school, then you would find that menstruation and all of that you would have had to deal with. But you have standard threes now dealing with that. So I think when you have all of those things going through, it is difficult for children. So that aspect, yes. So we also have to deal with that. And you have to know as a teacher at that level how to deal with them. You have to
Hmm.
understand why they may display certain behaviors. Not that you're going to condone it, but you have to understand the psychological aspect of it. You cannot ignore, right? So that is one aspect. Then you also have now where you have to get them settled and get them into that right attitude, develop that right attitude to work. Because some of them, again, as we mentioned, some of them still in that playful mood. They play. But then you have this major exam coming up. How do I balance? So you have, in some instances, you may be very rigid, only the academics, because, hey, we need to get this exam, you need to pass this exam. In some instances, so I think it's just about striking a balance. Being
Hmm.
able that,
Hmm.
yes, the exam is important, yes, you need to do well and whatever, but not at what expense.
Okay, because I'm listening to your response to the question, and it's fascinating to me. You haven't mentioned anything about the work yet. We've been talking a lot about the child and the children and what they are experiencing physically, emotionally, and mentally during that age. And just to make it clear for those who are, looking at the live and those who would be taking in the replay after, we're talking about the standard three level. And
Yes,
the standard three level is what I consider a really critical turning point. And my original thought of it was mainly on the academic
yes,
level, because that's where you sort of transition from the single words and sentences to paragraphing and essays. So I mean, I'm thinking of it from a creative writing
yes,
perspective, definitely. And I'm quite certain there's an equivalent for the math where you move
yes,
and you begin doing certain other equations. But your response really emphasized what the important and critical aspect of standard three really is the
yeah.
student going through all of these transitions.
Yes, and I mean, yes, I the work is important, but I firmly believe that if you do not understand the child, if the child is not at that level of being confident and believing in him or herself, then the rest of it would make sense. Because if you have a child who is confused, not sure, don't believe in myself, I don't know if I could do it, then doing all the work is like, to me, it's like spinning top in mud, as we would say. So I
Mhm.
try, yes, everything has to kind of happen simultaneously as well, right? So it's not that you're only spending time building a child's confidence and all of that. Yes, you have to put in the work, but I believe that you don't hardly ever you see, or very few times you see, work is being put into building a child's confidence and all of that. So I realized that at that standard three level, outlook is, my perspective is, simultaneously you build the child's confidence, you understand what this child is going through, in order for you to know what direction you're going to take this child in. And more often than not, once you could build that foundation and get that child to believe in herself, believe in himself, get that child to understand, I could do it. So whatever challenges I may come across, I could deal with those challenges and still be successful, right? So that is my main reason for really focusing on that child and on understanding why that child may be behaving this particular way, trying to develop that correct attitude, that appropriate attitude for work. Because remember, you have to understand that a child has to understand that, okay, we have a time and place for everything, we have a schedule, and all of that is in agreement. You are discussing with your child that, okay, we are going to spend 1 hour doing this particular activity, whether it's academic or otherwise. We are going to spend half hour doing that. We're going to spend. So I think once a child could internalize that, then everything else is smooth sailing. And then how would you get that child to internalize that? We going back to where we started, that you have to understand the child has to understand what your intention is as the adult, and then we could work from there.
Mhm. Mhm. Awesome stuff. So we're looking at that, um again, working with the child, understanding the child, and creating in the child that fertile ground where learning
Yes,
can take place.
exactly.
And then we begin presenting what's necessary and what can be done, the work. So we deal
Yes,
with the child first, make sure that they are going to be receptive
yes,
and have the confidence to take the steps, make the mistakes, try again, and
yes,
then we present the work. So it's
exactly.
it's really, I would say 60/40,
Yes,
60% working on the child. And once
yes.
you get that done, the rest would kind of fall
Fall
into
in line.
place. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly,
And
exactly.
and I know you mentioned in our conversations, you also mentioned that focus on standards three, where you spend more than a decade
Mm-hmm.
working with standard three students, so you really got a chance to understand what they're coming with, what is necessary, how to understand the child and get that balance. Now you're moving to another class.
Level, yes.
Yeah. And that would be the standard two.
Standard two, yes.
And you mentioned to me in our conversations that you believe there's a gap between two and three. Let's talk about
Yes.
that a little bit.
So over the years, I would realize that when children come to me at the standard three level, you find that they're not ready. And I mean, when I'm saying not ready, not necessarily the academics, but they're not ready psychologically, because of the fact that, okay, when I look at the curriculum, when I look at the syllabus, the content is similar. But again, I think it may go back to, if the child is not ready psychologically, not ready psychologically. So even though you're doing the content, the attitude towards the work might be poor. You find that you get a lot of resistance, right? And then it's because of my experience, I realized that, hey, it doesn't make sense fighting, as we would say, that child and just ignoring the psychological aspect, right? So I think psychologically, probably something was not adding up at the lower level,
Hmm.
right? And I am not saying that, okay, probably a teacher did not do it, or because we don't know. I didn't really do any scientific analysis to determine, but what I would have realized that from my experience, you would find that something did not add up psychologically, because you would get a lot of children coming, and as I said, a lot of resistance. The
Hmm.
workload is just too heavy, because the reality is that yes, we have a lot of work to do, right? And if you are already getting that resistance at the beginning of standard three, what will happen at the end of standard three into standard four when you really want them to focus and have that right attitude? So with that now, again, because of the experience, I started changing how I approach that standard three level, right? So I think that main gap might be the psychological gap, that the children
Hmm.
come not really ready for what is to come.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons when parents reach out to me regarding like creative writing lessons and they ask, "Do you have anything for standard twos?" I usually tell them, "No, I think at standard two, unless a child has a major challenge,
Yeah.
I don't recommend lessons at
To
that
see.
level."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Because
don't
that is,
recommend it.
yeah, because look, for example, um, with as we you mentioned creative writing, you would find that from my experience with children, you find that they hate the writing. They come, I don't want to write, I don't know what to write, I don't miss, and the complaints. By the time you say, okay, we're going to do all, the complaints start. And I realize that one of the reasons I believe is that children see writing just for exam purposes,
Mm-hmm.
not writing for enjoyment, not writing just for so, because
Yeah.
so what I started doing, and I think that would go back to you mentioned that earlier in terms of me starting the academy, because I realized that fun aspect of it is not necessarily there, because everything is just rigid for the exam. So we no longer put in that, let us do it for fun. We're learning for the love of learning. We are writing for the love of writing. So you would find that I started um, bringing in authors who have actually written a book to show children that the same thing we do with the writing process, and you end up with the end product, a story or a report or something, is the same thing that the author does. The
Yes.
author goes through that process, the drafting. Sometimes you get that writer's block. And would you believe when the children sit and they discuss, and they're like that aha moment, oh, that is what it was all about. So then now at that aha moment, then I could bring in what I'm supposed to do on the curriculum now, because you get them, the interest is there now.
Yep.
And they
Yep.
get
Yep.
that
Yep.
aha, and now they want to write.
You know you're talking my language there, right? So
Exactly.
I have to remind myself that okay, we're sticking to 12 o'clock because
Right?
once we start talking about writing and education, we can
We're
talk for
not
a long
finishing.
time. So, but
Yeah.
I like the fact that you mentioned that um interactive style because I
Yes.
know you use that multisensory and that
Yes.
alternative way of teaching the same way I advocate in
Yes.
terms of, writing is not just sit, read, write, speak sometimes, sit, read, write.
Hmm.
It's very involved because we're dealing with communication.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that I tell students and parents when I start my classes, the creative writing classes, I say writing is part of communication. So that's one of my foundation beliefs. And we start with that. So my very first class is
Hmm.
not about okay this is what an essay is. We
Hmm.
start with writing is communication and what does that mean? You have an audience, you have a process, you're sharing an idea. What are your ideas? And that's our first class because that's where I believe it begins.
Yes.
We could learn all the mechanics and then you're reading it and it's like what these people saying here. And I
Yes.
mean, we could all testify reading adults writing like that and
Yes.
wondering what is happening here.
Happening.
And
Yes.
I suspect it's because along the way, they weren't taught about clarifying ideas, sharing ideas effectively in writing. Now, I am going to be talking a lot about writing, but if you have any equivalent with math and the
Hmm.
other subject areas, because you taught all of the subject
All of
areas,
them. Yes.
please feel free to chime in because my passion and my focus, I'm like
Writing.
ultra focused on the creative writing.
Yes.
But I know this applies across the board as well. getting that interactive aspect, getting children to see, well, hey, I need my numbers to do things outside of class. I need the grammar to do things outside of class. Yeah,
Yes.
how tell us about
That
that a
well,
little bit.
that's so another sore area as well as mathematics, because children come, they actually, I hate mathematics. Why we have to do this? Why? And I want to believe too, it has a lot to do with how the mathematics is presented, similar to the creative writing, how it is presented, and that the children develop that dislike for it. Because I realize children tend to feed off the adult, how the adult feels about a particular subject. So, for instance, if you, as the adult, whether it's a parent or teacher, if you dislike mathematics, the child automatically will dislike it, because, of course, you will be teaching that mathematics with a bit of fear, a bit of dislike. So, the child would feed off of that. The child would realize that mommy or miss or sir is not too confident about it. Miss or sir don't really like it, mommy, and certain words you will hear people say unconsciously sometimes, and children pick up on that. So I think
Yeah.
we have to first realize, pay attention to what we say around children about that mathematics in particular. Well, creative writing, but I'm mentioning mathematics because you often in class you meet it. And some children, when I start to work with them with the mathematics, and you go outside. Sometimes we go outside, for instance, a perimeter, we walk around the compound, whether it's at home or at school or whatever, you walk around and let children realize that, hey, the distance around, right? And then they realize that, but we're not doing mathematics. Yeah, I get that from children, but miss, we're not really doing mathematics. And I'm like, why would you say that? Miss, because mathematics is about writing off the board and the notebook. And I'm like, no, mathematics is
So
all around that.
it's not just the mathematics then, it's like the learning.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And the
So
way
yeah,
the way the learning happens,
it's,
the way the learning is
yes,
taking place. So it's really about making the learning as practical as
as
possible so
possible.
that they can see it.
Letting them realize that mathematics is all around us. Because even we have a lot of discussion about the persons who use mathematics, professions. And when we start talking, they realize, okay, you have the seamstresses, you have the tailors, you have the cooks, the chefs need to understand mathematics. I often, recently, I read a story about a popular tailor, well known. And when he gave his background story, I was, well, happy, ecstatic about how it turned out. But then I started, of course, trying to link what he was talking about to the education. And he said that he was always failing in school, was failing bottom of the class, didn't like mathematics. And when he got to Form 4, one of his teachers told him that when you're choosing your subjects, well, Form 3 going into Form 4, when you're choosing your subjects, choose a subject that you're really in love with. And he would have chosen, well, I'm not sure what's the name of it, but basically tailoring. And he chose that and finished past it. When he gave the story, his parents didn't have the money to really send him to the next level, whatever. He ended up doing this internship with somebody else, whatever. I can't remember the exact details. But the point I'm making is that he's now a really good tailor, sewing for all these popular people, making a living off of it. And this was a person who did not like maths, didn't do well in mathematics. And you're doing something now that involves mathematics because you have to measure. You
Yeah, you
have to
have to
measure.
measure, and you have to, especially when you have a style, but then you have to fit different bodies to this style.
Yes. And when
Yes.
you look, you even hear other stories about, I remember the and this was long time. This person probably is really, this is years we're talking about. This person couldn't read or write, didn't do mathematics, but he could have put up a wall straight, could have done all of these things. So all of these things I show children that yes, we have to sit down. It's not only about passing the examination. Yes, SCA is one aspect of it. It is one road we have to cross, one area we have to, one hoop that we have to jump through. But it's not the be all of it. And the mathematics should not, or whatever the subject area, should not be limited to just the SCA to say, well, all right, I have to learn it only because of the SCA. You have to let them see learning beyond just passing an examination. So it's very exciting when you see children come in not liking the mathematics, and then they're leaving, and they're actually, and you hear parents saying, Miss, if you hear discussion about whatever subject and we're doing perimeter and this child is explaining to me about perimeter and this and the and nothing to do with the mathematics notebook or the mathematics textbook, but what is happening in real life. So,
Hmm. How it's applied.
yes, how it is applied. And I think that is where I get excited when I see
Hmm.
actually children showing that love for a subject that they did not like from in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I
So
think,
you mentioned parents. What as a teacher do you wish parents would know and understand?
well, I think I want parents to understand that they need to be patient because learning and education is not a one and done deal. It's not like magic that would just happen overnight. It's a process. So, sometimes parents get all antsy and they want it to happen and miss it's not happening and miss it. And then they also look at the grades, only looking at the grades and not realizing that it's a process. So, something as simple as I said, a child moving from not liking a subject and actually loving it, that is an achievement. And look at that. So
Hmm.
the child may now love the particular subject, but may not make the A grade, but it is an achievement and they will soon get there. So I want parents to, understand that patience is it's a big part of this whole learning process. And children bloom at their own time. And I don't think rushing a child into blooming is the right way to go about it, because it will just end up with frustration on both the child and the parent. And for me, because if I use myself as an example, I moved from one primary school to another. And in this particular primary school, because now, I mean, I would have considered myself an introvert as a child. And to some extent now I do what I have to do, but I would describe myself as being an introvert. And you would find in some schools, you will find that children tend to be overlooked because you may not be as outgoing or as rowdy as other children. Some other children are much bolder. They will come out, they will speak, they will ask their questions and stuff. So when you have a child who is not saying much, very introverted, automatically people believe that this child doesn't have potential, this child isn't intelligent enough. So you tend to be overlooked, right? And they tend to go with the children who are going. Now, after moving to another school, I realized that I was encouraged to explore my talents and explore my interests. So then when I realized that, the confidence started to build, because you realize that, hey, I am good at this, I am good at that, and you could.
Hmm.
And then, well, of course, the other aspect of life, the academics and stuff, excel. And well, back then, okay, we didn't have SCA, but we had common entrance, and I did well, in terms of what I wanted to go to. I wanted to go to this particular school. I went and I was successful in that sense. And you started realizing that, hey, the confidence was there. I could do this and I could do that. I could achieve. So I think sometimes we have to pay attention to children who may not be as outgoing, and don't just forget them because they're quiet and whatever. So I think parents as well could pay attention to that as well, and realize, if you notice that you are working with your child, you have to believe in your child. If nobody else believes in your child, you have to believe in your own child, right? And you have to observe, be observant and realize if you think your child is being overlooked. I mean, it may just be a genuine something, but you need to ask questions as parents, and and of course ask your questions, make your observations, and make your decisions based on what you're observing. So I think basically that is how I try to, as a teacher, try to operate in the classroom, try to advise parents accordingly.
Hmm. Because it's definitely not a one-sided thing. You know, parent sends the child to the teacher for learning to happen.
Yes.
Learning is a 100% all the time thing that's happening.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a collaboration between teacher, administrator, parent, and child
Yes.
for the learning to actually take place.
Happen. Yes.
So and again, I'm noting that all of your answers are focused on the people and what the people contribute, and
So,
it's not about the academics or the grades per se. It's
yes.
really about learning and developing the child.
Mm.
And I'm very happy that that shift in focus is
Yes.
so obvious and clear,
Yes.
because I'm reminded of, as you said, that the gap between the two and the three is more psychological. It's not
Yes.
an academic thing.
Mm.
And what parents need to do is really pay attention to their child
Yes.
and advocate for their child.
Exactly.
So, and you also mentioned about recognizing that learning and changes are taking place, even if sometimes the grades don't shift.
Yes, yes, because it's a process. It is learning is a process, and I mean learning does not only take place in the classroom as well. So you have to. I believe the more you put in the process, the more you do to support that process, the grades will eventually come up, because of course
Hmm.
you're building the confidence, you're building the child's knowledge base, because a child, again, if we go back to the creative writing, it's based on experiences. Even mathematics, in fact most of the subjects are based on experiences and how well a child could perform or do on a particular area, in a particular area, has a lot to do with the child's experiences, because you will find that children, okay, if I use an example, you have two children. One is the parent. I mean, and we starting with the parent because the home is the first place. So you have a parent now, parents, a family who's taking this child out all over. So the child has experiences on the planes, could have traveled, have gone there, done this, done that. And then you have another child who has none of those experiences, has never been exposed to any of those things. Typically, generally speaking, now I'm not saying that the child who has no experiences wouldn't do well, but typically it's easier for the child who has all these experiences to do your writing, do your creative writing, because you have
Yeah.
something to draw
And
from.
excuse me, you mentioned planes, but I want to even bring it closer to home than that,
Yeah,
because, going on a plane, even going to Tobago, that
yeah.
may be out of reach
For
for
some,
some
yeah.
people. But something like visiting the Pitch Lake,
Yes. Field trips, yeah.
yeah, something like
Yeah.
visiting the Pitch Lake,
Don't have any
where,
experience.
yeah, there isn't, the expense would be getting there.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yes.
much it. The expense is getting there. Hmm.
Because even look at a typical example, as you mentioned that, um, if you have to walk from, okay, you're living 2 streets away, and you're passing this particular street all the time. I have known children who don't even observe things like street signs in name of this particular street, and you're just walking. So, I mean, you rightly said yes, even within walking distance, you
Yeah.
find that, and I mean, whose responsibility it is really? I would think the parent will have to know that you have to start pointing out things to children. Even if
Yes.
you're on the highway, let us say, and the Caroni Bird Sanctuary is on the highway, you point out, hey, this is the Caroni Bird Sanctuary. This is we driving on the Solomon Hochoy Highway. We're on the Uriah Butler Highway. Because sometimes you're having discussion with children and you're asking, okay, we're talking about going to Port of Spain. We have just getting them to talk. And it's like, I have no idea. Where
Yeah,
you
I
need to
I was
ask.
surprised at how many students have not visited the Pitch Lake, and I keep harping on the Pitch
Yeah,
Lake again because it's not a costly
it's not.
venture. It's not, like if you go to the museum, there's also that. There are other places that, like we spoke about going on the plane or the boat, visiting Tobago, you have to, put out some funds and so
Something,
on.
yeah.
But there are places where you can get to just by making the effort to get to it.
That and
And
that
the Pitch Lake in particular is an international wonder
of
that
you,
people
yeah,
come from all over the world to
to
visit
see.
the Pitch
Yeah.
Lake. And yet we are here, and there's a large number of children. They get it to standard five, and they've never visited the Pitch
Yes.
Lake.
Yes, and I mean that is the thing, the point that experiences. I think you have to give the children the experiences because all of that is about learning. It's not just about the classroom. You have an experience, the beaches. Sometimes simple things I see. Okay, you discussed it Monday. Back in the day we used to have what we call news, where Monday morning after the weekend we sit and we discuss, ask questions. Where did you go? Where did you think? And the children will come because they look forward to that now because they know they went somewhere over the weekend, come back, and you would find that some children will give you good details. Miss, I went to this beach, and they could tell you what is the beach. They could tell you the name of the beach. They could tell you. They may not tell you the exact place of the beach. They give you exact directions, but they could tell you, Miss, the beach was in Point Fortin, or the beach was in Port of Spain, Maracas, whatever. But they're able to name the beach. They're able to tell you, Miss. Some children now, on the other hand, Miss, I don't know. I know I went on the beach. And I mean, I'm not even talking. I mean, and there are some 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds who will give you good details, but I'm not even dealing with the young ones. The big ones, 9, 10 years, they will tell you they don't know.
They went to a beach and
Yeah,
they had fun,
and that
but
is,
that's yeah, that's it.
yeah,
So what we're talking about, not just the experiences, because you realize that those are two different things.
yes, yes,
What When we say experience as teachers, we're not just talking about physically being in a place. We're
yes,
talking about observing, noticing details,
yes,
getting the vocabulary to share those
exactly,
details,
exactly,
so you went to the beach. Where is the beach? You notice the waves, you have the sand, you have the shells, you saw the boats, what, because a lot of our beaches are next to fishing villages.
yes,
What did you see and observe in your environment?
exactly,
So that actually takes the child out of their own head only, and
yes,
they start seeing other people's perspectives, and they start noticing the environment around them so that they can express their ideas. So
exactly,
a lot of parents ask me all the time, um, how do I help my child? Because, I want to support my child, and most people think of lessons, but I think that is only necessary for students who are at the point of preparing for the exam, or they have some challenge, they're missing
yes,
something that they're not getting. So then you get that information filled in. But what we're
yes,
looking at is, where does that expression and the ideas come from? How do you implement the vocabulary? You're not implementing the vocabulary that you're learning only on a paper for an essay for a teacher.
exactly. It's discussions, communication.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, and
Because
I
that's how
think
you sound out words, you hear how words work together.
together.
And so for me, I tell parents, they understand, okay, they want to get their child reading, but when you read, what happens next? You
Yeah.
have to have that discussion. You're
Yes.
discussing the book before they get it, so they kind of, the pre-writing part of it, the pre-reading part of it, you're doing that at home, but you're not telling them, okay, it doesn't feel like a lesson.
Exactly. And I think for me, that is what we have to not only see learning or learning in a classroom, and it could be school or lessons or whatever. I think we have to broaden, widen how we see work, academics. It could be learning, could be anything, anywhere, anyone. And that is one of the, you asked about what advice. I think that is one of the things that parents could do. It's, as you said, it's simple. I mean, I use the plane as the example. That might be on one end, but something simple as High Street. Well, I'm from San Fernando area, so you're walking up High Street. That's the main street in the city. So therefore, if a child doesn't know High Street as the main street, so you simple things, you're going shopping with a child. Hey, we on a high street now, and have a conversation so that at least anywhere you go with the child, simple things as that. You're going to the market, you're going to the
Yeah.
grocery. right?
Listen, I give some students an activity. We're talking about incorporating sensory description,
Hmm.
right? And so we're discussing how to write visual imagery, what you see, how to write the auditory imagery, what you're hearing, and all those things. So we're discussing how to incorporate that imagery into the writing. So I gave them an example of write a paragraph about going to the market. Some of them have never been to the
Yeah,
market. So they don't
exactly.
even know the first thing about going to a market. Now,
Hmm.
I understand COVID did us a whole lot of
Yes,
injustice
that
where,
was,
you're
yeah.
keeping your kids home and safe. You don't want to carry them out in these crowded areas,
Yes.
but different opportunities you can do, market at home, talk to them, share the ideas. So it's really about those everyday life experiences that
Experiences.
they can tap into to, one, build vocabulary, two, build expressions, three, hear how other people use the words and expressions so that they're
Yes.
more familiar and comfortable with the language, as well as see that the language and the learning and the writing and the math and everything, so like when I go out with my kids when they were a bit younger, I would give them the money and send them to pay.
Yes. So you have to count your change.
Yes, and make sure count your change. And if they have different dollars,
Yes.
it's the same paper, but one is a different color. What is
Yes.
the value of it? And
Of it.
and you have those kinds of conversations, because I know there are a number of parents who believe, well, I'm not an educator, miss.
Yes.
I'm not a
The
writer.
simple things.
I'm not a teacher. I can't do those things with my child at home, check their lessons and all of that. I can't do it because, miss, I finished high school, but I didn't get all
So,
my passes.
yeah.
And you hear parents saying things like they feel as if they can't support their children
Yes.
because they don't have the academics behind
But you
their
don't
name
need
and the paper
necessarily.
behind their name, but they
Yeah.
don't need any of that.
Yes. Yes. Because I have two experiences. One that, as you mentioned, that there was one years ago. This child probably finished school. And I remembered telling, well, she was an only child, and suggested to the mother, one of the things that would help to send her to the shop and whatever. So of course the mother's like, but Miss, remember the times that we live in. I said, well, you could adjust. So you go with her, you park outside the shop and send her in. You park in a position where you could observe and see her, send her in and have her go ask for what you need, etc. Check her change and whatever and come back. So she really took the suggestion and she started doing it on a regular basis. And she started to see the big difference. This child was moving from being very immature, didn't want to say anything, didn't, and she's so bold now and outgoing. And would you believe when she left, they normally have the standard fives hosts to the last assembly after SE. And would you believe that child was one of the hostesses? And I wish I had taped it, that child's speech, the language, and she would have been just what 11 or something. So
Yeah,
big difference. Then
yeah,
another experience so that I know that helped me. We used to, at the end of the month, time for grocery shopping, to go to the supermarket, and we used to have to sit and write out the grocery list, the list. So my mother would usually call out the items that she needs. And I am by the table there writing out. Of course, sometimes at that age, 9 years, 8 years, the spelling might be wrong. But you could understand what you're writing. Those children
yeah.
tend to write
I
really
thought
well.
you were going to say sneaky in some additional items. When
Well,
I
that
do that,
too.
if I call out 12 items on a list, I see
Yeah.
14 and I'm like,
She's like,
well,
where's
what?
that? Right? So we used to do that. And then when we dress now, we look into it and you go in with your list. And we have to know, so that will help with comprehension skills, study skills, spelling, etc. And when we go now, usually the grocery in the supermarkets, you have the above the aisle, you have the what you will find on this particular aisle. And we would have to look at the paper. So, okay, a tin of pigeon peas. We have to figure out now where we would find pigeon peas where we would find the rice. Sometimes she wants 2 kilogram rice. We have to go and read the label now to determine what is 2 kilogram, what is 4 kilograms. So that in itself, we're learning so many things right there. So simple things that we could do that would assist children. So when you come to the classroom aspect now, it wouldn't be too difficult because at least the child would have heard kilogram before, you would have heard the words pigeon peas before, the vocabulary is there. So at least when you do simple things, and it doesn't take much, because I mean everybody goes to the supermarket, you have your list, just add that extra activity onto it and make it such an experience
And
for
it's
the
actually
child.
a fun activity because I'm listening to you talking about it, and it sounds as if you remember it as a fun
Yes,
activity,
yes,
like
I'm
something
glad.
that I used to do with mommy or mommy used to have us do, and it was enjoyable. It
Yes,
wasn't
you
like,
felt like
okay,
an
do
adult,
this list, go and find this,
because
it's
you
not
felt
a
like an
chore.
adult.
Yes,
You
it's
felt
not
big.
a
Oh, go on.
chore.
Yeah, I am getting to write this list. You're feeling like, okay, you're old, and you know, at that
Hmm.
8 years or 9 years,
And
you
and
just go
what I
ahead.
used to like to do as well is like, no, 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 that's not on the list. We can't buy that today.
Yes, and you're disappointed, and your mind is like, oh, she caught me.
Or even
Yeah.
like me, if
Mhm.
mommy pick up something and I say it's not on the list
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
trying to keep to a budget,
A
right?
budget, so then that
And
is
even
something else you're
budget into,
teaching.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
do that with my kids a lot. So we go through, so okay, this is the amount we have. We have an
yes,
average of the prices. We average the prices so we know
yes.
what we can get and what we can't
Right.
get,
Mhm.
and so it's on the list. So some days we go and it's strictly, if it's not on the list, it does not go in the
Not
cart.
big. Yeah.
And some days we can go, and then sometimes I would say, okay, that's not on the list. How much is that? How much extra is that? That's going to add to the budget,
To the
right?
bill. Yeah.
So can it
Mhm.
fit within the money that we have? It's not on the list. Can it
That's your
fit?
teaching point
do
there.
we have to do we have to take off something and put that, or how do we do it? Sometimes we have that kind of conversation.
Yes.
So
So,
the like for me, the number one thing that I really wish parents would understand is what we're discussing. Supporting your child in learning is not about just checking their books and making sure they do their assignments. That is absolutely necessary, but it's also about exposing them to experiences that
yes.
incorporate a lot of what they're learning, and that gives the classroom teacher an added avenue for learning to take place.
Please,
Because
yeah.
imagine if you're in the classroom, as you are, and you're talking about, so, when you went to the grocery and you this and then that, and a child would be like, Miss, I don't go to the grocery with mommy.
Yes.
I don't go to the grocery
Yes,
with daddy.
yes, it's
I
full
don't do
of
any of the
plenty.
shopping. I never pay for nothing for
Yeah.
myself and check my change.
Yeah,
So
so
you
like
have,
plenty.
yeah, you have no references to work with
So
that child.
you have to
So
bring
you have to
everything
kind
to
of,
them.
yeah, you have to bring everything and start from scratch. And it's
Yes.
possible, but could you imagine how much more you would get done if
Done.
the child comes to the
With
classroom
some
with those experiences? So we're not actually asking parents to teach these things.
children.
We're just asking them to expose the children
As
to
many things as
situations.
possible.
Yes.
Yes, as many experiences as possible. So you'll always find that, okay, you have something to work with. The child will even be more confident too, because when the student realizes that, okay, I can have an input in the discussion. And yes, Miss applauds you. Yes, you're so right, and whatever. And you get the chance to tell the class about your experience. So the confidence is there. The child, you see the
Yeah.
differences in the
Yeah.
children's faces when they are able to give part of their story, their experiences, what they did, what. So all these little things add up, and it helps. They help.
Yeah, really,
So
really does. So, keep an eye on the time because
yes,
yes, I know we could talk about
talk.
this just one topic after another because it's so important
Yeah,
getting you really want as an educator, you want to assist and you want to support, but you recognize that your input, as valuable as it is limited, so
yeah,
that you really have to engage parents as well. And
yes,
it's not just about, okay, the parent has to understand what a plot is, or rising action or anything like that, but they can, discuss a movie or discuss a story with the child so that the child is interested in what's happening in the story. So you
Exactly.
don't necessarily need to have all the like technical details, but you can support just by giving the exposure and having that conversation with their
Yes.
child or children.
Yes.
Now, as we're wrapping up, I want to give you an opportunity to share, and certainly, we would be putting links in the chat if you can. I know you would have a link for your academy and a link for the bookstore, and the bookstore is fully online, right?
Yes, the bookstore is fully online and we cater for children, as you will have mentioned, between the 3 years and 12 years. So we have a variety of storybooks, educational resources that would assist, and the educational resources cover as many of the subject areas as possible: the mathematics, the language arts, the creative writing, right? And it's fully online. And well, the academy as well is we have the website for the bookshop as well. So
Mhm.
before I go on to the academy, we have the website available for the bookshop so parents can shop on the website and delivery and all of that. So you don't necessarily have to leave your house. You see what you like, you add to the cart, and it's delivered to you within 3 to 5 working days. Delivery is free for purchases $75 and over. So that is a great incentive, right? And again, well, the academy now also is available to children between 3 to 12 years of age. We offer a variety of services. Well, the typical face-to-face or online classes, usually it's from standard 3 up, standard 3, 4, 5. But as you would have mentioned, if it is that there is a specific challenge that a younger child may be experiencing, we accommodate that as well. But basically, it's the 3s, 4s, 5s. We also have a book club in the academy. We are supposed to be starting our new cycle next Saturday, the 13th, or this Saturday, actually, sorry, the 13th. And that book club is really for children between 9 to 12 years, where we have discussions. So you have three packages: you have the 1 month, 3 month, and 6 month packages. And for the 1 month, we have the one book and four reading writing tasks. Because of course, there's the connection, the reading writing connection. So we
Yes,
have,
yes, yes.
yes, we have after we read the book, we have two meetings for the month where first of all, first meeting where we will discuss the book, discuss the activity. I will explain whatever needs to be explained. The child goes ahead, completes the activity, and by the second meeting, the child should have at least gotten halfway through. So we could sit now and discuss the activities. So as I said, four activities for that month, one per week. And well, the 3 months is basically the same thing as the 1 month, but on a 3 month basis. 6 months, 6 month basis. So for the 3 months, you will have like 12 reading writing activities. 6 months, you have 6 by 4, 24 reading writing activities.
Same book or different books?
No, different books over the
So you do
six
like
months.
one book a month,
One,
basically.
yeah, one book per month,
Uh,
and we
okay.
do the activities based on that book to assist with the comprehension skills, assist with the writing as an extension. So you have vocabulary, obviously, that will help as well. So that's the book club. And then when we also have some free resources available on the academy website that parents can download and print, right? So they could access that www.deshaacademy.com, as you
Yeah,
mentioned. I
but
will
you
put,
could you copy it and paste it in the chat, and after this session, I'm gonna go back and make sure it's on all these spaces so
yes,
that the parents can get access to it. Because I realize, we need to have another chat, because
yes,
you see that book club. You mentioned it, you just
yes.
kind of sneak it in near the end, but that's a whole conversation by itself.
By itself, yes. I wonder if you're seeing it here. We really need to,
It's
I
well,
don't have a
you
problem.
could. It's not. Let me see if I could put it in, but I'll make sure it definitely goes in.
I don't think
Um,
I'm
I
seeing
I
it.
would I would go back and put it. And this is for the bookstore, right?
Yes, because I'm under the comments, I'm not able to put
I
it
should be
in
able to
here.
post it. So. All right. So it would be posted on
Okay, so I'm
the
seeing, yes,
Facebook page, Wood Coach Youth, as well as the YouTube is there. I would have to go into SEA Peaceville and post it,
to
but
see
you
that.
can, so those who are listening, you can find that's the bookshop and send me the link for the academy and I'll put it in as well.
Okay, I didn't
So you
send.
just kind of snuck that in there. And yeah, that's a whole conversation by itself, that book
Yes,
club and having the discussions and so on.
yes, that
And our
place.
collaboration, so we're gonna take just like about 3 more minutes just to wrap up and close off. And our collaboration, we've been working on a blog. It
Yes,
is an edu blog. We call it Better Learning Edu Blog.
yes.
And that is going to be launched in a little over a week. So we're looking at next week, Thursday,
Hmm. Yes,
to make it available to the public. And I would be writing articles. Miss Francis, yeah, I'm going to use that a
yes.
little bit. Miss Francis is
Yes,
Miss Francis is also writing articles, and we want to encourage any educator who is listening in. If you want to share articles as well, you can reach out to us because the idea is that a lot of what we're discussing here, we want to put that available in articles, a little bit of research, a little bit of commentary, experience being shared so that you, as parents and educators, would have as much access to information that you can get to support your child, support your children, your students, and even yourself. Because sometimes just having some ideas and knowing what to do reduces all of that anxiety
yes,
where dealing with your kids and the whole education system is concerned. So we're going to be launching that blog soon. We've
yes.
been already compiling articles. So we have a few that are ready and available. The website is ready. We're just, populating everything. So that's going to be out next week, Thursday. I will talk about it again next week, Tuesday. I'll probably do another live. I don't know because I have actually no next week, Tuesday. I'm going to be interviewing another bookstore
Hmm.
owner, but we're going to be specifically talking about reading
Yes,
because Miss Francis, darling, you're doing so many things. I think I have to like have you here for each thing
yes,
where we kind of you know focus. Let's talk about this today, right?
yes.
But and let me just put the link in the chat. So it's the Desha Academy,
Academy,
right?
yes.
Right. So the link is in the chat there for those of you who would like to get in touch with Miss Francis. Then you have both the academy and the bookshop. And of course, she's also a moderator in SEA, the Peacefield Approach. So if you're in that Facebook group, you can reach out to her there as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's 12:05, so we're closing off now,
Yes,
but I think this was indeed an awesome conversation.
yes,
I
definitely.
see there's a comment in the chat, very well put together. I think so too, because
Yes, yes,
this is the kind of information that parents really need to understand. There's so many people trying to sell them things and come to our um yeah, enroll your child here, enroll your child there, buy this, buy that. But quite aside from all of that spending,
yeah.
there are things that parents can do
Do.
in the home, visiting, going by relatives, going to the beach, different places, just by that interacting with their children that would really support and give that foundation. That example you gave about that student who became so confident just by going to the shop and having to ask for things.
Yes, it's still a big difference. And
Yes,
that's
yes.
I'm
So
an advocate for that, building a child's confidence before anything else.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, is there anything you would want to say, to close off as you're seeing the
Yes.
comments, right?
I just so that you're most welcome. Most welcome. Yes.
Yes, and anything you'd like to say just to close off as we wrap up?
Yes, well, as I mentioned before, I just want parents to believe in their children, be an advocate for your own child, support your child's learning. Learning does not only take place in the classroom, learning can take place anywhere. It's a process. So let's not only focus on the marks and the grades, but let's focus on learning as a process and as an overall part of life, right? And once you start doing that and being an advocate for your child, supporting your child, building the confidence and all of that, everything else will fall in place. So,
Awesome, awesome. I don't think there's anything else I can add except ditto. I agree. Do what she says.
yes,
Oh my goodness, thank you so, so much for your time. And it was so impromptu. Yesterday we were
yes,
chatting and I said, hey, could you do this? She said, yeah, no problem.
yes,
Always, always willing to assist and support
yes, no
and give
problem.
so much to help parents
Yes,
and other
yes,
teachers, build our nation through
yes,
building the youth. So
yes,
thank you everybody who was able to take in the live. I know a lot of people look at the replay. Thank you for spending your time with us and listening. And we do appreciate your feedback. Thank you for those who made comments. Please feel free, make comments, ask questions. We really do appreciate all the interaction and feedback. And let us know if there's someone in particular you'd like us to try to interview. Let me know, and I'll see if I could reach out and get someone to chat on whatever topic that you're interested in. And I think I'm spending the rest of the next two sessions, 2 or 3 sessions. We would be looking at doing interviews to adding information, not just focusing on the academics as well. So thank you very much again, Candice, for your time,
most
and
welcome. Thank
have an
you.
awesome one, everybody. Take
Yes, bye
care.
bye.